درود بر شما. Ladies and gentlemen, as I introduce Mrs. Lippert, the Vice President of the Intelligence Summit, I appreciate that she is with us, and I have to talk in English, and we're going to, when we put it on YouTube, we're going to have the Farsi underwriting for that. Mr. Lippert, thank you very much that you give us the time. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm glad to be with you.
Mr. Lewis, that the situation, while we're talking, I got and I told you what you did in the long time. And really, there's something happened, and everybody's worried about the Iranian government. And the questions, a lot of the question, Iranian in, out of country, they asking why it took 32 years, and why America didn't know what happened. This government is changing to be hassle for the world, and what plan they have is that to take over all the world, and even they don't have a tolerance for another beliefs. And what will be the future in Iran and our benefit, or our country in the Middle East? We have to see it every day in other country in the Middle East. We have a problem, biggest problem. Really, is it possible that America goes and fight for this fanatic people all over the world?
I think that the current Iranian regime represents a very serious threat, not just to United States national security, but also to stability in the region and really international stability. Its identification, its self-identification as a jihadist state is what constitutes that threat, and everything else flows from that. Its quest for nuclear weapons and other weapons of mass destruction, its export of its own revolution, interference in neighboring countries that we're seeing in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia and other places. And as well as its own horrific human rights abuses against its own people. I mean, all of this constitutes the behavior of a regime that has no place as a member of the international community.
So we see it that, let's say in the Middle East, in the Yemen, in Libya, and now recently in Kuwait. And what will happen if Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Doha, and all these people that, all this government and countries that up to now they are not our enemy, and Iranian government attack them, or as you see it, interfere in their government, what will happen to the free world? Even if you think only about oil, all the world will be dangerous, isn't it?
Well, I mean, you make a very good point about the threat that this regime poses, and I think it's very significant. We saw just very recently that all the countries of the GCC, the Gulf Cooperation Council, came together in a really unprecedented way and issued a statement saying to Iran, essentially, stop interfering in our internal affairs. Stop interfering and meddling in our countries. That I think, to me, speaks volumes about the threat that these countries in the region, at least of the Persian Gulf area, the threat that they feel from the Iranian regime. I might mention something else in this context here, and that is a little bit further around the region than only the Persian Gulf. Across the Middle East, we're seeing revolutions that are destabilizing regimes all the way from Morocco and to Libya, Tunisia, Egypt, and so forth. And the very worrisome thing that bothers me is that the Iranian regime is so very closely affiliated with and supportive of, openly supportive of, the Muslim Brotherhood. And to see these two jihadist organizations in alignment, one Sunni, one Shiite, but in this case they definitely are working together. And indeed the Muslim Brotherhood doesn't have those distinctions as some other Sunni groups might, that would cut off cooperation with Shiites. It's never had that distinction, the Muslim Brotherhood. So we're seeing the regime and the Muslim Brotherhood, in particular the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood, working more closely together. I think that's very concerning.
Yeah, that's correct. And as you said, Muslim Brotherhood, even in past in Egypt, they were trying for the power, and they got the power sometime. And all the terrorist act they did, it was a Muslim Brotherhood. And I wonder that sometimes I see it there. Our media, American media, sometimes they close their eyes, and some of our politicians even, I see it that they don't see it. What's a threat we have from this problem, and we don't know with the situation economic, with this problem that we have it, how many young people and troops we have to send out, and then we see it even sometime as an Iranian American, I see it that we have a support of this government, the Iranian government inside America, in Washington, D.C., and nobody's going to cut this this connection. And I don't know, do you think that Iran will the free world let the Iran do whatever it wants, and what will be the price that all the world has to pay for it?
Well, I think you make a very good point right here that the American public is not aware of either the threat from the Muslim Brotherhood or from Iran. And more to the point and more seriously, it's not just the American public, because the media don't serve them well in general. The mainstream media don't highlight these things, but also our own national security leadership in this country. Going all the way to the Director of National Intelligence, for instance, James Clapper, who suggested that the Muslim Brotherhood was a secular organization, an organization whose motto is jihad is our way and death in the way of Allah is our highest aspiration. He called that group a secular organization. So the lack of awareness on the part of our own national security leadership, I think, is very seriously concerning. And you see absolutely no attention paid publicly in statements, either from national security or the media in the United States, about this alliance between Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood. And the fact that they are moving closer together, in particular in Egypt, which in a way closes the circle that is closing in on Israel in particular. It's long been known, of course, that Iran supports Hamas, as well as Shiite Hezbollah in Lebanon. But with the rise of the Muslim Brotherhood to greater and greater positions of power in Egypt since the revolution, the relationship between the Egyptian Muslim Brotherhood and Hamas is becoming closer. And that strong bulwark that President Mubarak kept for so long across the Sinai, and a bulwark against Hamas operating in Gaza. Of course, Hamas is the Gaza branch of the Muslim Brotherhood. That bulwark is now coming down. More and more weapons are flowing into Gaza. And the result of that would be more rockets and missiles being fired into Israel. We saw just recently a laser-guided anti-tank missile being fired out of Gaza into Israel at an Israeli school bus. So you have that from the south, and then you have, of course, the Iranian longtime support for Hezbollah to the north of Israel in Lebanon. So very concerning that these alliances are deepening and strengthening across the region.
What is the role, because as I said to my viewers, you had a long experiences in international intelligence service. What happens in Afghanistan, Iran, and Pakistan? What's Iran doing there?
Well, there again, Iran is working with, supporting, providing material support to the enemies of America. Iran is deploying Hezbollah to train terror militias in both Iraq and in Afghanistan. And in addition to that, you have Iran openly supporting the Taliban, as well as other certain elements in Afghanistan, such as the organization of Gulbuddin Hekmatyar, who has himself a long-standing close personal relationship with Osama bin Laden. So you have this axis of jihad, if you will, in both of these places. The support that Iran provides to the terror militias in Iraq, for instance, is training, and it's also the provision of explosives and of weapons, in particular the kind of explosives that we see having such deadly effect against our troops and their armored vehicles, explosively formed projectiles or EFPs, other kinds of IEDs, improvised explosive devices, and vehicle-borne improvised explosive devices. And this is all being trained by the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the IRGC, as well as Hezbollah, because the two of them always work together. Where there is Iran, there is IRGC. Where there is IRGC and its subordinate unit, the Quds Force, you have Hezbollah. So you have Hezbollah training and providing these explosives. These explosives and this training are killing American troops and our coalition partners as well every single day in Iraq and in Afghanistan. And yet you don't hear our national security leadership talking about this. It is very much downplayed by the media as well. And why? Is a good question.
Mr. Lopez, there is a long time questions, Iranian, not only American, but in all over the world. They're asking me and our people in here that America has to know, even Khatami, due to Khatami, 8 years, he was coming to America, we were talking to them, and he bought the time for the Iranian government to have an atomic bomb. And now, even in that time that everybody knows what the Iranian government is, why our president has to insist that, again, we want to talk? They don't know that there is a game, and now it is a border and timing border. We are a very dangerous situation. More time to give to this government. It's know what happened in Iran. This is Iran that has a 2,500 years history. And we had someone like Cyrus the Great that, as a History Channel, met the documentary, and it says, up to now, we don't have any human to think like him. Now we have the government to say you cannot have a dog, you cannot have a bird, you cannot have a cat. And what's going on? From human even that goes to the dogs and the... What's going on? And our president, still they want to talk to this government?
Well, I think there is a fundamental failure, a willful blindness, as Andrew McCarthy puts it, a willful blindness to understand the totality of the scope of Islamic jihad that is being waged against Western civilization. Iran is seeking the leadership of that jihad movement. For many, many centuries, the leadership, and in particular from the 20th century in the formation of the Muslim Brotherhood and later its offshoots, Al-Qaeda and other groups, the leadership has been held by the Sunnis in many ways. But now recently, with the rise of Iranian power in the Persian Gulf, we're seeing a real effort on the part of this regime. It is a totalitarian regime. It's a jihadist regime according to its own constitution. It's not me saying that. It's their constitution that says that, and their leadership. But it's also a regime whose eschatology involves the belief in the Mahdi, the return of the 12th Imam, and the fact that they believe, the president, Ahmadinejad, the supreme leader, Khomeini, and the leadership around them of the Ayatollahs that surround them, they actually believe power. They really believe that they can bring back the 12th Imam, their messianic figure, and usher in the end of time and the judgment day by creating chaos on earth. And so to have this regime now rising to power and seeking the leadership of the Islamic movement or the jihadist movement internationally, and a regime that is driving hard to acquire a deliverable nuclear weapons capability is extremely threatening. And yet our Western leadership, and in particular the United States national security leadership, doesn't understand this, doesn't acknowledge it, doesn't recognize it, and does nothing to stop it.
All right, then